everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and today we continue with the Bestiarum, a dive into the respective species of the Halo universe, and we conclude Humanities' entry into the Bestiarum with modern humans. Humans have existed for 100,000 years in their current form, only faintly resembling their powerful ancestors of times long past. Despite their relatively small footprint in the galaxy, they have been unwittingly thrust to the centre of a conflict revolving around the enigmatic ringworld constructs known as Halo. Following the close of the Forerunner-Human War, humanity was devolved into various distinct species. The most prominent of all regressed human varieties, however, was the Hamanoush, which would become the modern human being over the course of 100,000 years. The human species would work to piece together this mystery of their origin for centuries until startling revelations were made upon the discovery of Halo and the Forerunners. The modern human is classified as a mammal, and more specifically as a primate. They are warm-blooded bipeds who walk upright, have 5-fingered hands with opposable thumb, and possess sufficiently capable intellects with the ability to reason and to create tools. Over time, a rich diversity of ethnic groups and cultures naturally emerged through the development of tightly knit communities. Compared to their most ancient ancestors and other contemporary species such as the Sangheli or Sanshayum, the modern human being is smaller, weaker, less resilient, and has a relatively truncated lifespan. However, they remain the most significant race with relation to the mantle, due to the machinations of key Forerunner lifeworkers. With the development of the Spartans in the early 26th century, new physiological possibilities have emerged, which some believe will return humankind to its ancient roots. 100,000 years of gradual progress would finally give way to modern humankind, who, by the 20th century, would once again pierce the heavens and escape into the depths of space. By the late 21st century, they began populating their own star system, ignorant of their ancient heritage among the stars and the genetic promises granted by the librarian. Believing themselves alone in the galaxy, humanity struggled to unite their species, their civilization often teetering on the brink of collapse due to civil unrest. Even as hopeful scientists and workers formed colonies on Luna, Mars, and other nearby worlds, divergences of policies, economics, and access to resources grew more pronounced, until it became virtually impossible for their species to maintain unity. Within only a few decades of bravely reaching to the stars, humanity began to descend into a bloody series of conflicts. The 22nd century saw the rise of the Kosleviks and the Freedens, rival sects and political blocs whose extreme ideological conflicts began to wreak havoc on human populations across Sol. Although Earth empowered the United Nations to stem the escalating violence with policing and peacekeeping forces, it only exacerbated it. The vicious Jovian moon campaigns waged between the Kosleviks and the Freedens would become modern humanity's first experience with true space warfare. The conflict would eventually spill onto Earth's own soil in a protracted and dreadful siege known as the Rainforest Wars. The United Nations finally responded by creating a powerful military arm to defend humanity on Earth and her colonies, the United Nations Space Command, the UNSC. It was then that the conflict took a decisive turn. Swift and direct action by the UNSC led to profound losses for both the Kosleviks and Freeden groups, and ultimately a ceasefire. By 2170, the United Nations had ratified and invoked the Callisto Treaty, which gave the UNSC complete jurisdiction over Earth's colonies and led to the formation of the United Earth Government, the UEG. Exhausted of war and united under a new governing body, humanity experienced an extended period of peace and technological progress. Less than 2 centuries later, Earth would begin the Domosdiaspora, the single greatest movement of human population in history. After developing faster-than-light technology with the introduction of the Shore-Fujikawa Translight engine, which would take their ships to distant star systems through slipspace, humanity began exploring and cataloguing worlds across the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy. In 2362, decades of planning came to a head with the launch of Odyssey, a massive colonization ship bound for Epsilon Eridani II, which humanity would name Reach. Organised by the Colonial Administration Authority, the CAA, and protected by the Colonial Military Authority, the CMA, hundreds of colony ships were commissioned and crewed, setting their sights on worlds that promised escape from cramped orbital habitat cylinders and the increasingly exhausted ecosystems of Earth. Humanity was once again a burgeoning civilization as they spread into the great expanse, igniting an unprecedented period of growth and development. Despite years of prosperity and hopeful enthusiasm, seeds of rebellion were eventually sown. Towards the end of the 25th century, colonial worlds began to chafe under increasingly strict regulations and tariffs levied by Earth, stirring discontent and rebellion. Gradual escalation and rising tensions eventually led to the next major human conflict, the insurrection, spreading rapidly through the outer colonies and very quickly penetrating the inner colonies. But as outright civil war and the collapse of the human empire was all but certain, it was interrupted in 2525, when humanity made first contact with sentient creatures from other worlds. A galaxy-spanning alliance of alien species called the Covenant had found the remote human colony of Harvest. After an initial parley went awry, the planet was quickly invaded by the Covenant and all population centers obliterated with a brutal orbital bombardment. The Covenant later revealed that they believed it was the will of their gods to bring an end to humanity. At the head of their empire were the Sanshayum, whose species had allied with the ancestors against the foreigners 150 millennia earlier. These modern Sanshayum now led the Covenant in the worship of the foreigners, believing the ancient civilization had become gods by activating the network of ringworlds called Halo. This same zeal fueled the Covenant's hatred of humanity, and for the next 30 years they would wage a campaign of annihilation, destroying one colony after another, satisfied only when the flame of humanity was fully extinguished from the galaxy. Although UNSC power had grown during the insurrection, the human fleets found themselves significantly outclassed by those the Covenant possessed, and ground forces were unprepared for violent assaults by fanatical legions of alien infantry. The Covenant forces seemed inexhaustible, undeterred by horrific casualties, and seemingly immune to human efforts to counter their advanced technologies. The only ray of hope during these first years of burning worlds and shattered fleets were the Spartans. Originally created to prevent the breakdown of human civilization during the insurrection, the Spartans proved that their enemy could be defeated. Yet even these victories were few and far between. Humanity was still fighting a losing battle, being brought closer to the brink of extinction, one glassed colony at a time. After 10 long years of desperate rearguard actions and attempts to hide the locations of worlds through draconian policies such as the Cole Protocol, the Covenant finally reached the inner colonies. Humanity's fate seemed all but sealed. In 2552, the UNSC fought a Covenant fleet to a standstill at Sigma Octatus IV. The enemy was forced to retreat, but it was a short-lived celebration. News that the Covenant had finally found Reach, humanity's most critical military stronghold, forced all who had survived back to the Epsilon Eridani system. Despite the threat this posed to humanity's future, only saw an opportunity to deal the Covenant a heavy blow and potentially end the war. Summoning all available Spartan assets, a risky operation called Red Flag was planned where Spartans would attempt to capture one of the Covenant leaders and use them to broker a ceasefire. During the battle for Reach, however, many of those Spartans were forced to deploy to its surface in order to defend Reach's crucial orbital guns, ultimately preventing the Red Flag from taking form. When the planet seemed beyond lost, the lone vessel Pillar of Autumn took one of the last surviving Spartans and a critical AI created explicitly for the operation, fleeing into slipspace to an unknown location. Weeks later, the Pillar of Autumn emerged from slipspace in the shadow of a gas giant, Threshold, where they found a mysterious ringworld called Halo. Aboard was the legendary Spartan known as the Master Chief, and Cortana, the most advanced human AI ever created. After landing on the ancient construct, they soon discovered that Halo had been built by the Foreigners as a powerful weapon of last resort against the Flood. Alpha Halo was one of 7 ringworlds that, when activated together, would destroy all sentient life in the galaxy in order to starve the deadly parasite out of existence. When the Flood escaped containment on the ring, however, the Master Chief was forced to destroy the installation and prevent its activation at the hands of the Monitor 343 Guilty Spark. The Spartan and Cortana narrowly escaped Halo's destruction and returned to Earth to warn humanity that the Covenant would soon arrive. Shortly after their return, a Covenant fleet did indeed punch through Earth's defences, amassing their ground forces in East Africa as they searched for something below the surface. When the Covenant's flagship suddenly fled into slipspace, the UNSC in amber clad followed it, arriving at yet another ring world, this time Delta Halo. The enemy quickly attempted to activate the installation, but UNSC forces prevented them. They were aided by rebel Sangheili, who had broken off from the Alliance when the Sanshayum attempted to replace their kind as military leaders with another Covenant species called the Jurulhane. This sundering came at the revelation of Halo's true purpose by a Sangheili known as the Arbiter, and would prove devastating for the Covenant. During the battle on Delta Halo, a flood outbreak on the Ringworld found its way to High Charity, the Covenant's massive city ship and the centre of its empire. As a contingency against the flood, Cortana remained behind while the Master Chief returned to Earth, stowing aboard an ancient foreigner vessel that led the Covenant's final invasion fleet. On Earth, humanity made a last stand against the Covenant as the enemy fleet razed part of East Africa, revealing an ancient foreigner portal buried underneath. Upon activation, the Covenant used the portal to travel to the Ark, an immense foreigner installation that had both created the Halo ringworlds and could activate all of them from outside the galaxy. The Covenant rushed towards accomplishing this goal, hoping to join the Foreigners through transcendence. With help from the Sangheili, however, the UNSC prevented this, and both the Master Chief and the Arbiter fought together, retrieving Cortana and using a newly forged Halo in order to destroy the local flood infestation and prevent the activation of the entire array. Their efforts were successful, breaking the back of the Covenant and eliminating the immediate threat of the Flood, and finally bringing an end to the Human-Covenant War. The aftermath of the war posed new challenges for humankind. During the final years of the conflict, they had commissioned a massive UNSC flagship called Infinity, and a fourth generation of Spartans, all intended to re-establish governance over what remained of human space, and start the long and challenging process of rebuilding. In the midst of this, numerous post-Covenant sects began to emerge, attempting to fill the void left by the former alliance. Coupled with a resurgence of old hatreds from within humanity, this created a tenuous period of uncertainty for those who had survived the war. Humanity would have to endure ex-Covenant splinter factions, the re-emergence of the Didact, the military commander of the Forerunners, and his army of Prometheans, and seemingly a resurrection of Cortana now in full control of the domain, and thus much of the Forerunner technology that had been left scattered across the galaxy following their disappearance and the firing of the array. But instead of fighting for humanity, it was evidence that she had been compromised by rampancy, a form of AI corruption that resembled insanity, and in this state declared herself as the only true reclaimer and rightful inheritor of all that belonged to the Forerunners. She issued an edict of peace through oppressive control, which she would mediate through the galaxy by destructive Forerunner constructs called Guardians. This act would force humanity and the former Covenant species under Cortana's tyrannical governance, bolstered by the Prometheans and the threat of the Halos. During the final years of the Covenant War, a rogue Jurulhane named Atriox violently sundered ties with the Covenant to form the Banished, a fearsome group of raiders intent on seizing Forerunner technology, not for the sake of religious zealotry, but for power and advancement alone. After finding their way to the Ark and pillaging many of its stores, Atriox uncovered a shocking secret that led him to return to the galaxy and quickly make his way to Zeta Halo. When the UNSC Infinity suddenly arrived at Zeta Halo ready to initiate an attack on Cortana, they found the Banished already there, fortifying the Ringworld surface and preparing to neutralize Cortana themselves. The UNSC and the Banished collided above the ring, and Infinity was quickly compromised, suffering significant losses. While witnessing this, Cortana found herself face to face with Atriox, and in an effort to prevent the Banished from taking control of the ring, she destroyed herself and a large portion of Zeta Halo. The humans who survived the Banished attack on Infinity made their way to the surface of the Ringworld, where they would be stranded for months, engaged in a bitter and bloody battle of attrition. The destruction of many worlds at the hands of the Covenant and the targeted strikes by Cortana and her legion of Forerunner constructs have left humankind reeling. Many worlds attempt to function as they did generations before, managing to survive, even thrive, with minimal outside support. Others, however, struggle with poverty, crime, and lack of essential resources. What remains of the UNSC is scattered across the human domain in pockets, unable to effect any serious change or even communicate with Earth. With many leaders concentrated on the UNSC Infinity, the flagship narrowly evaded Cortana's reign, eventually resolving in a direct assault on her central command at Zeta Halo and a catastrophic encounter with the Banished's efforts to seize the ring. Humanity's fate is now tied to an ancient Ringworld construct and the pivotal battles waged on its surface.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, kindly tap that like button, and if you're not already subscribed and want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Pop a comment down below telling me what you thought of today's video, or if you want me to cover something specific in the near future. I want to take this opportunity to thank and give shoutouts to my patrons and YouTube supporters: Spartan10148, my singular contender class Ancilla, the triumvirate of minds within my installations Metarch, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, my 7 installation monitors Selphia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan1029, Chris, Orion and Shane, the crush of sub-monitors Legion, Ryan, Labrat, Spartan0137, Element 0, J3, Cult, Evermore's, Personal Devil, Scion Esports, Phantasma, Ashton and 191 Shaken Lightbulb, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my most loyal of Enforcers, and every single one of the awesome people supporting the channel over on Patreon. My Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members Spartan137, again, Maury, Jimbo and Balaz, and all other YouTube members keeping my installation functional on that glorious vacuum energy. I cannot thank you all enough. Shout out to John because... And if you like what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel on one of the support links in the description to net yourself some tasty merch and help keep the channel going. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.